Okay, and welcome to my skate park API for Coventry. So, first of all, I'm just going to do a quick demonstration of Postman and what we can do with Postman. So let's first of all do a GET request, but we're going to do a GET request with place query. This is where we get our basic, our JSON data from the Google Maps API with our query. We have basic authorization enabled on this API, so we need to have Chris and we need to have the password in order for this to work. So if I go and send that now, as you can see, we've returned data in JSON format, which we've specified. We want formatted address, name, place ID and rating only. So if we go get that data now and copy that into a post request in favorites, so I'll get rid of this one here and we post what we want to add there. Now if we send that, we can now see that we've got the saved message here and that the item that we've saved. So if we go do a get request on favorites, which again we need the authorization for, we can now see that we have one item in our favorites list that we've just added. So if we go now and do a put request, you can see that we've already changed some of the data here. So if I change this to just Coventry, and we haven't changed anything on the place ID or anything on the top formatted address or the rating at all. We've just added in Coventry to the top there. Now we have to pass the ID here, which is here, in order for this to work. So we send that and we get saved location updated and we get that there. So that's now updated that item with that ID only. So now we've got parks in Coventry within our item. And the last part is we can do a delete, which again we have to pass the ID so the system knows which one to delete, and again you have to have the authorization. So we send that, we can now see we've deleted that, and if we do a GET request just one more time just to confirm that has been deleted, as you can see it's now been deleted. Right, so welcome to the code part of my API. As you can see on the left here, I've separated everything out into modules. So I've got Node Persist, my Jasmine module, my spec folder for me testing, and I've got my Node modules and modules. So I'll just quickly go through the ones outside of there. I've got my README, my JSON, which allows me to set my dependencies, my secrets.js, which simply has my API key in, and my git ignore, which just stops these from being put to my Git repository every time I do a commit. So we go into some code. We've now got the index.js. Now what we're doing here is we're simply specifying everything, all the modules and everything that we need when we run the app. So for example, we want to use Restify because we want to build a RESTful API and we need to create a server. This is all the modules that we're going to be using. So Google API, which is the place query. We've got favorites and we've got authorizing users. We've also got, we also have to state that we want the server to use full response, the query parser, body parser, and authorization parser using Restify. We've also got server get, which is allowing us to specify that on place query we want to use the get function. So similarly for favorites, but we've got more here, which is get, post, another get, but that's to do with place ID and stuff, and getting details for a particular fave using ID. We've also got put and we've also got delete. We also have similar for user. Now the last bit on this page is we set our port and then we create our server and it will give us a message saying that that's running on that port. So just to move it on, let's now have a look at our modules. So within modules we've got authorize, DB, favorites, place query and users. So place query, this is where we're actually getting our information, getting our JSON data that we saw when I did the example. So this is the URL which is calling the actual API, Google API. Now as you can see here, I've got my query that would usually go in here, but for some reason at the time of record it's not working, and I'm not sure why. But if we just have a quick look at this, we've got request because we're making a request. We want to do the place search. So when we get down here, we want to get the URL and the function with the error, response and body. So I have two console logs, that's just for me own, so I know the code's running, which will put it in the console. So we have our places section here, which is our array, and we're going to pass the information from the API into places and then send that out to the body. But first of all, so we get our results back in the JSON format, and then what we do is we're looking for within place, which is going into places, we want formatted address, name, place ID and rating of the results that are returned from this query, and that then gets put into places and then we push that out to body. So moving on to the next bit, favourites. In here we've got a number of different functions that we were on about in the index. So we have validate, which obviously we want to validate that the favourite is correct, and now obviously if you haven't sent data, it's going to request you to send data. We've got list, which allows us to list what's in the favourites. We've got add, which allows us to add to the favourites. We've also got the get function, which allows us to get a particular favourite. We've got an update, which allows us to update an already existing favourite of the list. And we've got obviously delete, which we went for each one of these functions in the example. So moving on, we've got authorize, which is allowing us to set up our basic auth, because there's Chris and password that we needed to be able to run any of the functions when we're in Postman. We've got users, which this would allow us to validate users, send export a validate code, add users, delete users, and list users. And we've also got database, which is, this is where we're setting up our node persist. This is where our favourites is getting stored using node persist. Obviously we have our error logs here. Obviously if the system's unable to initialize the data store, and we obviously have, so that sets up that, which goes into this node module here. We're going to favorites and then go to Chris. That would, if the server was running at the time, when this would then come up with items. And obviously if I was creating users, you'd then get users in this section here. Now just quickly mentioning on testing. So as you can see here, I've written a couple of really quick tests here. This is just to validate that there is information when we're passing information to favourites. So this simply verifies, is this place ID? Yes, 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 and yes. Then don't send an error. That's validate that that's correct. We've done that for each of this section. Now I've also started setting up Jasmine and started setting up a few other sections here, so I can write a lot more tests, a lot more in-depth tests, and that'll allow me to go forward and validate my code without necessarily having to do trial and error. It makes it easy for me to identify where my code's gone wrong. Just another quick point, obviously if I had more time I'd like to write a lot more tests. The problem was really, if I was to do this project again, I'd start doing the tests right from the start. The problem was I had most of my API done before the end, so it was quite hard to go back over and write tests for things that you knew were already working. So obviously if I was to do this again, I'd like to make sure that I was writing tests from the start. So that's just a quick look at my API. Thank you very much for watching this video.